Welcome to I Drink Your Podcast, where we drink and talk about movies from 2007.
The fourth dimension will collapse upon itself, you stupid bitch.
Shut up, I'm a man and I know what's good for me.
Bountiful penis. Amen.
Boy, my ass is sore.
You can get pink eye from farting in a pillow?
Yeah, but you gotta be bare-assed.
I'm gonna invent a toothbrush for your butthole.
It does the trick.
Paddington Bear.
He's a homewrecker?
Yeah, he wrecks homes.
You are a murderer of love.
I drink your podcast. I drink it up.
Welcome back to another episode of I Drink Your Podcast. Today we are watching that Jesse James long title movie, but joining me is Ben.
Howdy, partner. Pew, pew, pew.
Nice. Emily and
Hello.
You're not going to give Emily time to
What
say
the fuck?
anything?
I don't know.
Just runs over it.
Ben, like he
No, that's
wigged me
perfect.
out.
He was treating her how this movie treated women.
Oh, no.
Shit.
No. You tripped me out with your guns. But yeah, joining us for this episode this week is our very special guest, Gally from the Rewind Movie Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me. Yes, hello, listeners.
Yay.
Do you want to shoot off some fake finger guns real quick? Or
Since you're so obviously a native from Kansas City.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I'd be the sniveling villain, wouldn't I, normally, in a Western, yeah. So, pew, 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 pew.
Yeah, pew. Love it. Okay, so before we get started, does anyone have anything interesting in their glass?
I absolutely have nothing interesting in my glass, but I did get shot twice just for this episode. I got my COVID vaccine. Pew pew. So we're just sipping on some water today, but I did get shot twice, just like Jesse James, except I think he got 3 times shot.
I've got the Jesse James special, which is 3 fingers of whiskey.
And when you cut it out the middle finger, it's still 4. I am drinking the classic Old West cowboy moonshine.
Ooh.
Oh.
Did you make it yourself in a jug?
Yeah, I made it in the back hills of Kentucky.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it's also, I'm not that cool, so it's apple pie moonshine.
I love
that's really
apple
cool.
pie
What do you mean?
moonshine.
I just don't feel so machismo after watching a movie about Jesse James, and then I got to drink apple pie moonshine.
It's so good.
It is really
though.
good.
Gally, what are you drinking today?
Well, can I be greedy? So I have two drinks. Also, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to sort of advertise local. I have just so you guys can see. I've great for podcasting, by the way. So I've got barrel.
We do lots of visual gags.
Yeah, always. Well, I have a barrel aged innocent gun, Blood Red Sky, which is made here in Glasgow, which is where I live, which is lovely. And I also, because we were, doing Assassination of Jesse James, I've Maker's Mark, which claims it's Kentucky straight whiskey. So if I get a bit quiet later on, you know why. So there you go.
I do like me some Maker's Mark. It's pretty good. And it also works for Mark Brandanowitz, that is in this movie.
More like Brandana quits.
Hopefully you've seen Parks and Rec, listeners.
I'm glad Emily made the joke before I did, because it was in the plans. I also thought about drinking just 2 or 3 sips of beer and then claiming I was tipsy because I'm cool like Jesse James. But then I was like, nope, moonshine.
I was wondering if any of you had actually, decided to, because I picked this film, listen to Cher's song about Jesse James and listen to it on repeat like I have all week. It's the perfect antidote to the movie. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys think about it.
You're going to learn a lot about what I think about it soon, I promise. But I do want to learn about Gally first.
Tell us a little bit about yourself in the Rewind Podcast.
Okay, so I'm one of 4 co-hosts of the Rewind Movie Podcast. We are one of many. I mean, there's not like the short of them out there, but we look back at formative films from our younger years and we try and reappraise them our one USP is that we utilize our kind of experience working in film and television industry and try and we try and just look at it based on sort of a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of experience, and mainly, sort of films that you hold close to your heart. And then I don't know, sometimes you shouldn't go back. I'm looking at an episode we did on Mortal Kombat, which
What?
yeah, I know, it's sacrilegious, right?
But it's so good.
Well, I'll let you just keep that. Yeah, don't listen to that episode, Emily. That's all I'm saying.
I do have to ask, Gally, do you do all the artwork for your podcast?
No, we don't. So one of the really cool things about the podcast is we're complete hobbyists. It's all for free, but we've used it as a bit of a mechanism to sort of maintain our love and passion for cinema, but also as friends, because we all live, one of the guys lives in South Korea, two of them live in London, I live in Glasgow, we've friends in Canada, some in the States. So it's a way of us keeping in contact. And God forbid I can't have this conversation with my fiance. She's not really into films. So luckily I've got the show, but the artwork is done by one of the co-hosts called Devlin, and he does them all bespoke portraits, hand drawn using charcoal.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're quite cool, and we've had a few celebrities. Thora Birch, when we did Ghost World, followed us back and sent us a little message saying she loved her portrait, and so it's quite nice. Trying to get Sharon Stone to like her Basic Instinct one, but she's not got back to us yet. She will do. We'll get her back. We'll get her.
As you know, our podcast is all about 2007. What were you up to in 2007?
Well, this was sort of a regressed memory. I'd completely buried it away, but I'd actually graduated that year from film school, and I'd moved to London, and I started working on a few UK productions. A lot of them will be lost on you, and probably most of your listener base. There's a show called You Are What You Eat. I don't know if you've ever had that in the States, but basically we had it in the UK, and it's a fake doctor, because you can just get a doctorate. You can just sort of make these things up. And she used to go around and inspect people's poo, and then that would denote what kind of diet you had. And then she would be able to, from looking at your poo and what you eat all week, be able to put you on a better nutritious diet. I worked on a show like that, which was not what it was all about. Certainly wasn't what I was thinking about when I left film school.
The fact that you said a show like that means that there are other shows that do something similar.
I assume they're buried in like local access cable in the States somewhere. But yeah, so I worked on sort of a few UK productions like that, and a few indie films. And then I managed to get on a sort of regular contractual work on a really popular British television soap. Again, it might be lost on your listeners, but it's called Emmerdale. So it's about Emmerdale Farm, and it's a bunch of, it's like a good soap show, and they're quite popular in the UK. So they're not like your Sunset Beach kind of soaps. It's a little bit classier, a little bit.
What were you doing on these different shows and different indie films?
Especially You Are What You Eat. I'm interested in that program.
Were you the one that dug through the poop?
No, oh well, yeah. I wish I got to the heady heights of dodging through the poop. No, I'd literally just graduated at that point, and so I was a runner on a few shows, which literally just going around making coffees and getting people's lunches. But I eventually worked my way up to third AD, and then that's what I was doing. So third assistant director, looking after the talent. That's what they say in quotes, and making sure that you basically just at the behest of the first AD, because the route for me was always trying to get into the director's chair. So you have to do the hard yards in that department on a set.
So, what made you fall in love with movies?
Well, I'll try and keep this one short, but I'm half Greek from my dad's side, and yes, all of the things in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, they are true. My dad will, well, apart from Winderline, but my dad will, through wordplay, always find a way of getting back to the Greek meaning of whatever a word is. But yeah, so I'm half Greek, and my dad bought me a book on myths when I was really, really young, and I got really into sort of Greek myths. And then he also, because his English wasn't great, when he moved to England, he had no filter. So, you know, how like parental guidance, none of that. So I'd watched, I think I'd watched like The Exorcist when I was about 8, and I'd seen Alien and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And he honestly, I just watched these films with him, and he would always like grumble like, watchable. You know, that was his constant. It was like the films are watchable. So I just fell in love with, paired with my sort of love of Greek myths, just visual storytelling. So that's kind of where it came from. And I had a sort of video TV combo in my bedroom, which is a big mistake for
Lucky.
Well, and isn't it weird that I now fall asleep guaranteed at 10 p.m. every night, but when I was a kid, I'd just stay up till 2, 3 a.m. and then go to school the next day. No issues whatsoever. So I used to just watch films all the time, and that's where it kind of came from. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since. So this whole trying to get me into long form television doesn't work because I'm a 3 and out kind of guy. I can't watch anything more. It's got to be 3 hours, 3.5 hours tops, beginning, middle, and end. I can't be doing with 9 series of 1 hour episodes. Doesn't work for me.
I'm excited to be talking this movie with you, and it's exciting to meet you and have you on. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. If you haven't listened to our podcast before, the first half is going to be discussing and reviewing the assassination of Jesse James. In the second half, we'll feature our Battle of Twits, a creative competition this week featuring Ben up against me. The current leaderboard is the guests are at 8, Wes is at 6, Emily's at 3, Ben is at 2, and I'm at 0. So let's talk about this movie. The Assassin of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, directed by Andrew Dominik, featuring Casey Affleck, Brad Pitt, Sam Rockwell, Jeremy Renner, and a few women. Well done.
The James Gang committed over 25 bank, train, and stagecoach robberies from 1867 to 1881. But except for Frank and Jesse James, all the original members were now either dead or in prison.
When the famous outlaw Jesse James rejects Bob Ford's request to join the James's gang, Bob remains hopeful and hangs around their next train robbery. Their robbery is somewhat unsuccessful, so Frank James leaves discouraged, and Jesse sends the gang away, except for Bob, who helps Jesse's family move to St. Joseph, Missouri. After Bob returns home to his sisters, he learns that there's a plot to capture Jesse for the bounty, and shortly after, Jesse abruptly leaves St. Joseph.
I don't know about you guys. I had never seen this movie before.
I'd seen it, and I'd forgotten everything.
I watched this yesterday, and I didn't know that this was Act 1. I missed a lot of things.
I'm very fascinated because obviously I looked at the previous films that have been picked, and I won't lie, had it not already come up, I would have probably picked Sunshine. But it's on equal standing for me. But I'm fascinated to know what you guys. So Emily, you'd never seen this before, and obviously quite an intimidating runtime. So was that in the forefront of your mind? Same for you, Wesley. Were you guys thinking, what has this guy from the UK subjected me to? Because this feels like it's going to be
definitely.
Yeah, the 10 Commandments was shorter with Charlton Heston, I think.
I always get a little worried when I see dramas that are over 2 hours because I always have to split it up. And this is what I did. I ended up watching it the first hour and 40 minutes, and then I watched like the third act separately the next day or two. And then actually this morning I watched it again because I really liked the aesthetic of the movie. I don't know. It just had a really nice way of bringing me back in. I didn't really understand the beginning either, Wesley. And so that's part of the reason why I put it on this morning, because I needed to figure out what the fuck even happened. But I was really brought in by the narration and the cinematography and the music and the ambiance that was there. I didn't really think that I was going to like it, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah, I don't know how much you know about me and my distaste for long movies. So as soon as I saw 240, I was like, fuck. But similar to Emily, about 2.5 hours in, I was like, man, I'm really enjoying this movie. And I looked and I was like, oh my God, it's almost over already. Like it went faster than I thought it did. It was absolutely gorgeous. I really love Brad Pitt, and I'm so happy to have an Aldo Raines sequel.
I think part of the reason that this runtime doesn't feel so long is that a lot of the shots are extended length shots. Like it's the camera lingering on a person for a long time. Whereas if you get a bunch of shots rapidly, like a Transformers movie that's 2.5 hours long, that feels like a long fucking movie because there's so many shots and there's so much coming at you. This was really a meditative movie, something to just really like sit and think about and stew. And because of that, it didn't feel long.
And this may be controversial, but I liked this movie a lot more than There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men. And I know that everyone's going to be really upset about that.
You're speaking my language, Emily. I like this.
Oh my God.
You're right, Ben. I felt like the way that they had this meditative feel on the long shots of the people, I felt like I was more invested with what was going on with those characters versus the other two movies. I wasn't quite as invested.
Yeah, I think, Ben, you what you said there about the long lingering shots on the characters, I think you made me like the movie a little bit more. For me, this movie, the best part was always, the great performances, but head and shoulders above that, the music, the soundtrack is one of the best I've heard to this day. And I feel like that carries the film. It carries the aesthetic. Roger Deakins does a really good job with all of his shots, except for some of those shots of the chair where it's like your super shallow depth of field. The shoe, I don't necessarily care for those, but I grew to hate the narrator. I was like, okay, what is this? What is this? Tell me, don't show me stuff. And I didn't like that over time. And because of the length of the movie, I just slowly got into this love-hate relationship with him where I'm like, I don't care, dude. Don't tell me how Robert Ford's feeling. Like, let me just look at his face. And like, I think what you said, Ben, about, hanging on Mark Brandana with his face and, the dialogue about like, I don't care for this business too much anymore. Like I started feeling that whole melancholy feeling that you're supposed to feel during this movie.
Matt, can I maybe
persuade me?
Well, I'm not going to try and persuade you because everyone's entitled to their opinion, and it's all about how you feel, how you experience the film. One of the things that I think is fascinating about this one is I saw this film in the cinema with Devlin in 2007. This is just in between, sifting through poo on You Are What You Eat, and one of the things that I found fascinating, because the film it's I think intentionally really long. There were rumors that the original cut was 3.5 hours, which I think would have probably tipped most people over the edge. But the narration, I think the film has obviously got a big push and pull with regards to the myth versus the reality, and that is a theme that runs through all of it. And one of the reasons why I think Roger Deakins' cinematography is so great, not only is it just drop dead gorgeous, but it amplifies that theme, right? So you see images, but you can't they're not crystal clear. And that's very, that's evocative of the era and the photos that were being taken at that time in stereoscopic lenses, but also the story and the man himself. So the myth of Jesse James is he's a Robin Hood type who robs from the rich and gives to the poor. But the reality, not to go too far into the film, but even in Act 1, during that first robbery, I mean, they do both simultaneously the myth and then completely undercut the myth. So when he comes out from the steam of the train and you see him sort of walk out, I mean, that is basically Charles Bronson in Once Upon a Time in the West territory with the long sleeker. But then when you see the robbery, it's long. It goes on for ages. It's brutal. And then you see the sort of the maniacal nature of Jesse James. And it isn't like a Tombstone with Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp, where we get to see the legend in this like gunslinging actioner. You feel pity and you don't really like Jesse James. And that's one of the things that the film, I think, does really well. But the narration, I think, helps with that because he's kind of framing the story as we go along.
I think there are probably two reasons why the average moviegoer would like this movie more than There Will Be Blood or No Country for Old Men.
Aw, talking about me.
That's right. So one of the reasons is, I think, that this movie had a lot more characters that it really fleshed out, whereas There Will Be Blood focused more on like a single character, and No Country for Old Men had 3. So the runtime of this doesn't feel as daunting because like there's more people to jump around to and really talk to and get to know and have these scenes with. The other thing is the narration, as we've been talking about. And this narration is a complete 180 from the narration in No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men is all about the thematics of the movie, and this is all about the story. And it's a lot more accessible because of that, because you don't need to really internalize anything in this movie to really understand what's going on. Whereas to fully understand No Country for Old Men or There Will Be Blood, you almost need to be meditative while you're watching it and be thinking about, what does this mean? What does this individual shot mean? Whereas the narrator just tells you in this movie what it means.
And I like it.
Yep.
Hey, did you guys ever heard of this Roger Deakins guy? Well, I just pulled up his IMDb, and that's a heck of a list.
Yeah, he's pretty good. 2 movies in 3 weeks for us. That's pretty damn good.
I mean, the fact that he didn't win Best Cinematography for this film is pretty criminal.
He was nominated twice in this year. He was nominated for No Country and for
this one,
Assassination, and he lost both of them.
Mm.
Yeah, because he lost for so many years, and then he finally won Blade Runner, which totally deserves. Fucking love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
He lost to There Will Be Blood.
Oof.
Bob would rarely vouchsafe his opinions as they talked. If spoken to, he would fidget and grin. If Jesse palavered with another person, Bob secretaried their dialogue, getting each inflection, reading every gesture and tick, as if he wanted to compose a biography of the outlaw, or as if he were preparing an impersonation.
Jesse learns of the betrayal and slowly seeks out members of the gang to find Jim Cummins. Dick Little and Woody Height have a falling out after Little sleeps with Height's stepmom and they attack each other. Bob kills Height, and then the Fords hide the body. Later, Little is apprehended by the authorities and taken in for questioning, while Jesse stops by Ford's home for dinner and ruthlessly makes fun of Bob's fangirling, turning Bob against him.
So I'd ask the question about the length. I will ask the question about your thoughts and feelings and your apprehensions maybe about the Westerns, because I'll just say from my perspective, as someone who is from the UK, I really love the Western genre. I think it's probably one of the most malleable. I think you can transpose any kind of genre, story type, narrative. And one of the things I love about the Westerns, one of the things I love about this film is there's clearly an idea about celebrity and how celebrity can be warped, twisted. Folk tales can be written about somebody that aren't necessarily true. You know, the idea of kind of the start of fake news almost, if you wanted to be a bit hot button topic. And that's all baked in to this film. And I think the Western can kind of carry that. It's fertile ground for this kind of stuff. But I do know that for example, my fiance, if I say we're about to watch a Western, because I tried to get her to watch this with me this week in preparation for the show, it was a straight no. It was just literally like, no, don't like Westerns, don't like old fusty, people with no names walking into towns and shooting up the place. And I just wondered if that was something that you guys felt when I picked it.
Well, I personally love Westerns. Like, I think it's a fun genre. And then, obviously one of my favorite video games is Red Dead Redemption. But do you think you could maybe like put the training wheels on and try to get her to watch Rango?
I could try. I'm trying to think what. So I mentioned it earlier, but we watched Tombstone because I figured that's a super accessible Western because it's essentially like a proper Hollywood shoot 'em up with everyone being like dialed up to 11. Kurt Russell's mustache is beyond 11 actually in that film. It's quite a phenomenal bit of sort of facial hair. And she enjoyed that for what it was. I also kind of made mention that the director was Greek, so she was like a little bit more sort of apathetic to my needs. But yeah, I wonder. I just love the idea that American history, and I'm a bit of a history buff as well, and I just find that the Western is a great way of kind of recontextualizing American history because it's always about the American frontier. Good guys and bad guys. You think about the old Westerns that were, cowboys are good, Indians are bad. And we all know that that's simply not true. And I think the assassination of Jesse James, on top of looking at the characters, deals with the genre as well. The idea that, there is nothing glorious and magnanimous and anything to be celebrated.
Yeah, and I think that if your knowledge of Westerns is limited to the idea of John Wayne as this, machismo guy, hearing like, let's watch a Western would be very off-putting because I'm not really interested in seeing that type of male personification anymore. But then you think about Westerns, how we've come to know them now, and it's a lot more like Star Wars is a Western, essentially. It's a spaghetti Western. So I don't have that stigma anymore with the idea of watching a Western. Not as nearly as much as I have a stigma of watching a movie that's 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Wow.
We all knew that Emily hasn't seen a lot of movies. And I swear, because of fucking No Country for Old Men, I had to do a lot of research and digging around Westerns. And so my husband and I did a lot of just conversations around why there was an appeal of Westerns. I took some time to find some really great YouTube series out there about just like the transition from the different time periods of Westerns. And then I actually watched my first like old school Western, and that was A Fistful of Dollars. I watched that last week and I loved it. The idea of this outlaw, I really did have a fun time. And that ending was just such a great shootout. And I wasn't expecting to like it. I was going to just sit there and go, oh, okay, I'll just watch it and it'll be fine. But I also agree with you, Ben. There are a lot of movies today that could have like this Western idea where we have this outlaw, not such a good or bad person. It's this neo-Western feel. And that's why I think I like Blade Runner 2049 so much, and why I like this movie so much. And Gally, I'm similar to you, where I grew up on myths and legends, and that's what I loved. I loved stories. So when watching this movie and seeing the difference between the reality of them being Confederate assholes that wanted to continue having slaves and murdering people and robbing, to how the public viewed them, I really liked that contrast. Wesley, are you like me with Westerns where you'd only seen Blazing Saddles, or were you into some Westerns before this?
I had actually never seen Blazing Saddles until very recently. And I only like Westerns because I'm very full of myself. And it starts with my first name. That's just a joke, because I actually don't really like Westerns all that much. I really haven't seen that many. I don't really have an opinion on Westerns. I like the modern ones. Like I agree that the John Wayne style does nothing for me. I don't want to see that. But I am curious. I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, but what is like the time that Western movies in America is set in? What was the equivalent of that in the UK? What was happening during the US frontier?
So obviously we were having sort of a little bit of hoo-ha with you guys. Obviously,
what?
Not many podcasts happening.
There weren't many podcasts, no. But obviously, the idea that we might not have been as friendly, but we've got the special relationship now, so hence why I'm here. But
so
no,
special.
Very, very. But we were, it was sort of colonial. It was the British Empire basically around that era, and we also were having a lot of ding dongs with the French. So we were expanding our naval fleet, and we were essentially colonizing the world. So at that point, we were at sort of the height of our powers. So when you say, Wesley, very similar, the idea of the American frontier, the American was sort of growing as a country. I think they make mention about so Jesse James is in Kansas City, and Kansas City was bigger then than it is now. As in, it was a huge city. It was something that, akin to kind of like a New York, a metropolis. It was the same kind of discussions, but just maybe we were doing it on a global scale. But you've taken over now, so we'll get back. I'll get back in my box over here in the UK.
Yeah, that Kansas City piece. I mean, Kansas City was really at that time the last major city before you head out into the western portion of the country. That's why it was so large. It was like that last outpost before you ventured towards the California way.
And it was cool because Kansas was like, no, I'm going to put a city in your state.
Yeah.
That's right.
I do want to bring it back because, Matt, you brought it up. I started to love this movie more because of Red Dead Redemption. I've never played it, but I'm in it for the story and for what it looks like. And I'm pretty sure that when they were creating Red Dead Redemption, they looked at a lot of the cinematography that Roger Deakins did, because there were like matching images when I was looking through this that I was so invested with just the beauty of this movie. And it was very reminiscent of me falling in love with the Red Dead Redemption characters and the story and the plot and the world.
Where this movie differs a little bit, though, from Red Dead Redemption is that Red Dead Redemption had a clear main character.
Right,
and I think this one doesn't. In the beginning, it's kind of hard to figure out who you're supposed to be rooting for. That is, if you're not aware of the title, because the title very clearly lays out who you're supposed to be rooting for.
Spoilers.
Right.
And when you say rooting for, this movie's kind of inconsistent on like who it wants you to like.
Oh, I don't think you should like anybody in this film. I think that's one of the great tricks that it plays, is that for 2 hours and 40 minutes, you're going to watch a bunch of people that you can sympathize with, maybe. So you look at someone like Robert Ford at the beginning. There's a scene where he's speaking to Jesse James's brother.
Oh, it's so awkward.
And it's a little bit awkward, isn't it? And you can tell he's on the outside. He's on the fringes of the gang. You know, the rest of the gang are all helping out the sort of the idiot one who's talking about a time that he was with a whore and not realizing that she was just out for money, and that they're all having their little relationship. And Robert Ford is trying to sort of demonstrate that he's actually got some skills. And then there's a moment when he goes to speak to Jesse James, and at that point it's Brad Pitt, right? So you would immediately, your allegiances will be, well, that's Brad Pitt. It's the star of the film.
Amen.
But he's not, right. The film is about Robert Ford, and Robert Ford is not a likable individual. But I think there's a moment at the beginning of the film where you are supposed to sort of sympathize with him, but he goes over the edge to just pure creepiness, whereby you think this. I think the brother says there's just something that gives me the willies about you, and you feel that as an audience, maybe.
And Casey Affleck does a great job of being such a creep.
He did so good there. But you describing that now just made me realize it's so similar to the scene in 300 where I can't remember the guy's name, the one who wants to be part of the 300.
the Hunchback.
I got the very similar feelings between those, like the dynamic and the intent in those interactions. They're the same movie.
Well, the creepiness of Casey Affleck is not just apparent in that scene. There's also the scene at the dinner table where he goes all number 23 on Jesse James and is
We're just bringing all the 2007 movies together.
I like it.
And he's like, we're both the youngest brother, and your middle brother has 6 letters in his name, and mine has 6 letters in his name. Yeah, right. It was just like, it's so creepy, but it was also super fitting for how a fanboy would be in the early 1800s. Like, this is like him. He's a star fucker, essentially. Casey Affleck is, and he wants to be a part of Jesse James.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree, Ben. And the other really revealing thing about that scene is it's the scene where Robert Ford, he turns on Jesse James because he's being outwardly cruel, and he's also embarrassing in front of his entire family.
And he kicked his cousin's ass.
He did, yeah. And he's already kind of, the curtain's been pulled back, and he's revealed himself to not be this great outlaw hero. And the other thing about that scene is how tangential are the links. But I think, you can empathize with that. He says, like, your father was a pastor, my father's a pastor. It's really, really thin. But if you're a fanboy, like you say, then they're the kind of connections that you're going to make. One of the things that the film reminded me of when I first watched it in 2007 was, is it Mark Chapman who assassinated John Lennon? Same thing. Love your music, love you so much that I'm going to go beyond just adoration. I'm going to literally shoot you in the back. Spoilers.
Yeah, I love the whole fanboying thing because I didn't really put it in 2021 context while watching it, but I did think that his secret stash box of all of his cool Jesse James stuff was like, it's the only container in the entire bedroom, and it's just ever so slightly hidden under a hanging sheet. But that whole idea also, I loved the line, do you want to be like me or do you want to be me? I thought was such a chilling part of like how spoilers from the title. I know how this is going to go.
There would be no eulogies for Bob. No photographs of his body would be sold in sundry stores. No people would crowd the streets in the rain to see his funeral cortege. No biographies would be written about him. No children named after him. No one would ever pay 25 cents to stand in the rooms he grew up in.
After Bob makes a deal with the Governor Charlie, Bob's brother convinced Jesse to bring Bob along for the next job. Although the mistrust between them steadily increases, once Jesse has finally accepted Bob into the gang, Bob kills him, contacts the governor to earn his reward. Unfortunately, Jesse James was a bit of a legend and loved by people, I guess. So Bob made a play about it to tell his side of the story, and then he was killed by a crazy guy. The end.
Like I said, I got a little tired and I couldn't figure out how to finish this up. So this is what I think.
This reads like how I write most things.
I feel like, okay, so Emily, like this plot summary is perfect because like the narrator is doing all of the heavy lifting at the end.
Right.
He's like, and this happened, and then this happened, and nobody would mourn for him, and nobody would do this, and Zooey Deschanel comes along, and she says some stuff.
That's actually where the narrator lost me, was in this third act near the end, because the entire last 15 minutes of the movie is just being told what's happening. And like, I was on board with it up until then. And then by the end, I was like, okay, dude, like, let me just watch how this plays out instead of you telling me how it plays out.
I find that fascinating, Ben. I think maybe it's because it's the long road to the end. But one of the great ironies of the film is that obviously Robert Ford is seeking the same kind of infamy as Jesse James, and we see a film that is 2 hours and 40 minutes, and 2 hours and 20 has got Jesse James in it, and his myth is being deconstructed, and the reality is being shown. But then when he dies, he is. I think they say it cost them $2, which I'm sure back then was quite something, for each newspaper. And is it P.T. Barnum with The Greatest Showman, $50,000 for his body, all that kind of stuff. Robert Ford kills him, and within months' view, the public have completely turned on him. And I love the fact that his 15 minutes, that sort of coda at the end, the epilogue, I really liked it. But again, I completely respect the narration maybe taking you out of it a little bit. But I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, in those 15 minutes, I think the narrator said he had done the play like 800 times or something. So that could have been the span of years, where he didn't have any self-awareness. And I think, like, as much as I hate the narrator, a lot of that storytelling was super necessary because it's just doing like almost like a full movie in this like wrap up where it's like, and then he had the realization he shouldn't have killed him. While he did get scared, he was going to get killed himself. Like he killed his friend and now he feels bad. And like, I just felt like it was just it was necessary, but at the same time, I also hated it.
Yeah, I think my problem with the narration is that it tried to equate the mythology of Jesse James with the mythology of Robert Ford. And as a Minnesotan who grew up just outside of Northfield, where they have Jesse James Day every year, because that's where they finally like battled off Jesse James at the beginning of this movie, when they're talking about the loss that Frank James and Jesse James took and how they lost all their gang. That happened in Northfield, Minnesota. So I've been growing up hearing this myth of Jesse James, and then to try to have them equate it to Robert Ford, I was like, dude, they're not even close to being on equal footing.
And I think it's super funny that Ben grew up with all of this because he was texting me about this. And I'm like, wait, he's a real person? This is a real story?
Oh my God.
I was in such a weird state of mind because I finished the movie, and then a day later, that's when I figured out it was not a story. Like it was all a real thing. And so I don't know if it changes my perception of the movie itself, but I'm definitely like less impressed a little bit because I thought these characters were things that it came from someone's mind. And so I was really excited about that. And I was also very lost in the Red Dead Redemption feel of all of it. So yeah, it was a huge shock to me to find out that this was a real story. And I did love the tension right before Jesse James dies. Like that buildup was great. And then I did feel a little bit of a disconnect for the ending.
Oh, wow. Okay. I find that fascinating because I took it the other way, Ben. I didn't see that they were trying to equate both. I think the narrator says that there'll be no eulogies, there'll be no one visiting Robert Ford. And then it kind of, he has that conversation with Zooey Deschanel, which I think is really quite revealing because he's not a likable character. It's one of the things that I love about Casey Affleck because for an actor of that size, and especially when you're going up against a Brad Pitt, you would think that you'd want to try and retain some likability as an actor of that kind of stature. He doesn't. He's not like his brother, who's kind of wanting to always err on the audience's sympathies. He goes full. He commits fully to being a bit of a sniveling piece of work. One of the things that I love is right at the end, he says to Zooey Deschanel, I expected applause. There's an entitlement. Even though he says he regrets it because he didn't think he would know how it would look to people shooting a man in the back who's unarmed, he's still kind of clinging on to the idea that he should be loved. I think he says, I expected applause. I think it's tragic. It's a tragic tale of someone completely misjudging the room. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm misjudging this room. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's all good.
I feel like Casey Affleck was super unlikable for 99% of the movie, but I think somewhere towards the end when, Jesse James is unraveling, and I think that scene where Robert Ford's about to get up to use the bathroom is his excuse, but he was going to go murder him in his bed. And then you hear this gun cock, you start to feel like how much his back is up against the wall. And for me, he became so much less of this sniveling weirdo who made you feel creepy and stuff. And you felt more of like, oh, I could be in those shoes. And like, I could see how it's like you get killed or you kill because earlier in the film, Jesse James shoots somebody in the back, a friend. So for me, it's like this hypocrisy.
All of the killings in this movie happen from behind. Like nobody is ever shot up front.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to say what this movie thinks about just outlaws and killing in general. And that's why my question is like, is Robert really a coward? I know that the title tells us he's a coward, but is he a coward? What do you guys think?
Coward.
No, Ben, I'm still reeling from the fact that you said everyone gets shot from behind because my mind went immediately to the first guy in the beginning that they didn't kill, but Jesse smashed his face. He was on the train and he falls down and he was going to shoot him in the head. He was face down and I was like, whoa, my mind. So I don't know how I feel if Robert's a coward. I just felt that he was a complex character that was trying to look out for his best interests and was trying to get fame in any way he knew how. But I don't know. I guess I want to know what Wesley thinks.
I think
that's what
the
I want to
real
know.
coward was Sam Rockwell.
Agreed.
Who had the gun pulled but didn't do it.
Well, there's a certain aspect to the assassination that was almost a mercy killing. Like Brad Pitt accepted his death. He knew he was tired of living with this guilt. And Casey Affleck, he shot him in the back. Like Brad Pitt was ready to die, and Casey Affleck was just the guy who pulled the trigger.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Ben. You feel the weight when he puts the guns down. I don't know how. It's one of those things that you can't express, but there's a tactile nature when he puts those guns down on the little sort of sofa. You feel the weight of it because. So here's a question for you guys. There's two ways of reading it, isn't there? Everyone's got a fatal flaw in the film, so it's a bit Shakespearean. So, for example, if you track through all the gang, and I'll go really quick, but if you think about Dick Little, it's his womanizing. That's his fatal flaw. He's a smart guy, hence he's already colluding with Jim Cummings because he sees the writing on the wall in the gang. You've got the idiot who gets shot in the back by Jesse. His is just simply his naivety. The Woodhite, it's his overprotection of the family. So everyone's got a fatal flaw. Clearly, Robert Ford's is a kind of entitlement for fame. And Jesse James. So here's the question: he keeps Robert Ford around. Does he keep him around because he knows that Robert Ford is going to eventually turn on him, like everyone else who warns Jesse James about him. If you think about the way his wife responds every time Robert Ford comes into the house, Mary Louise Parker does a great job of just kind of giving you that sense that she knows that this guy's bad news. Or is he, like you say, is he doing it because he's trying to perpetuate his myth? If I get shot in the back without any guns, then I'll become a martyr. Or is he just simply, his fatal flaw is his vanity? He likes adoration, and Robert Ford gives it to him. He says, like, read that story about me right at the beginning when they meet. And I always flip between the two every time I watch it.
You just said a lot of really good stuff.
I know.
I think the reason and the weight that you're describing when he puts his guns down on the couch right before he dies, I think you get that emotional impact from that visual because of the fact that we know what the title of the movie is. And we've been waiting for it for 2.5 hours. And at that point, we're like,
when?
okay. And when he starts to walk away from him and let someone else behind him, I'm pretty sure it's Robert Ford who gets told earlier in the movie, don't ever let Jesse behind you.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time that it's very clearly that he's letting someone else behind him unarmed. And it's the end of the movie that's titled He's Gonna Die. So yeah, we kind of know what's going to happen, but I think that's kind of why you have that emotional impact. And I also, just to go back a little bit further, I don't think that Robert Ford is the coward because to what you just said, he wanted to die. And I think the fact that he did so unarmed to be a martyr as a famous person is so that's sitting with me.
Yeah, to get back to your question, Gally, I think that question of is it vanity that kind of allows him to allow Ford into his group. I think the answer is no, because Ford was an ass kisser from moment one. And if he was just all about vanity, he would have had him on his team the entire movie. Bob Ford would have never been out of sight of Jesse James if he needed that vanity and that smoke blowing up his ass. I do think there's the piece that you said, though, where it's like he becomes a martyr. And I think that is probably, he was thinking of his legacy when he kind of put those guns down, and he knew that this was going to have lasting impact for how people thought of him. And I think that was more why he brought along Bob Ford.
Yeah. And the narrator was also talking about how they were planning a lot of unsuccessful heists and robberies towards the end. But I'll tell you who was the real coward. It was Jesse James's wife for not cleaning that dusty photo of the horse that got him killed. She's the real reason.
It's a difficult line, that one, because I think if when you hear the line in the stage play that Robert Ford's written, it sounds so goofy, doesn't it? Oh, that picture that looks mighty dusty. And I think the film recognizes that it's quite a goofy line. So they really underplay it. I think Brad Pitt literally kind of muffles it, and you see a ray of light with the dust. But the film just gets away with it, because I remember the first time I saw it in the cinema, it was one of those where if someone had a camera on me, you would have seen me kind of have a fickle brow, like, what? What's that kind of line?
Yeah, like a dog trying to figure out where sound is coming from. Like.
This picture that I've not seen in this scene, but I think the film, again, that's the bit that tells me that Jesse James is like accepting his fate. You know, the net is closing in. That's what tells me is it's such a goofy line, because why would you go up and dust a picture at that point? It seems so trivial,
Such great observations by Brad Pitt, Jesse James, about the dust on the picture. Wesley, I'm sure you have other observations as well.
These are just a few of our incredible thoughts.
I'm by myself, sitting on my couch in a dark living room, hitting play on this movie. All I knew was Jesse James, because I'm too lazy to read because this title was ridiculously long. The title screen pops up and I finally read it, and I whisper to myself, spoilers. So that's just a glimpse into my world. I also really thought we were going to be watching a movie about the end of Team Rocket.
Oh my God, Wesley. So that's a perfect segue into my game today.
Oh God. Game on!
My game today is called The Assassination of Jesse James.
And Meowth.
And Emily's going to play today. Emily, I'm going to give you a statement, and you need to tell me if that statement describes Outlaw Jesse James or Team Rocket members Jesse and James from the Pokemon series.
I don't know who Jesse and James are from the Pokemon
Well, you better look
series.
them up quick.
I'm with you there, Emily. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm also looking them up.
They're the bad guys. They have Meowth.
They're the villains.
Oh, I know who they are.
So your choices are, is it a statement that describes Jesse James? Is it a statement that describes Team Rocket? Or is it a statement that describes both? And so as not to cause confusion, I'll be using the pronoun they, there for whether it's Jesse James or Jesse and James. So that's just a standard pronoun I'm using, they, there. Don't read into it. It's not going to cue you into the correct answer.
Okay.
So can I get 60 seconds on the clock? And away we go. They're gang members.
Both.
Correct. They love to wear hats.
Jesse James.
That's correct. They're always one step ahead of their enemies.
Jesse James.
That's correct. They have a companion who's a cowardly pussy.
Both.
That's correct. They utilize disguises to trick their targets.
Jesse and James.
That's correct. They loved riding their horsey.
Both.
Incorrect.
Damn it.
They always focused on their next big score.
Both.
That's correct. Their next big score is that fucking Pikachu.
Jesse and James.
That's correct. They got blasted at the end.
Both.
That's correct. Oh, domination, Emily. Way to go.
Yay.
Well done.
I feel good about that one.
I think the only one you got wrong was the horsey one, right?
Yeah, and that's just Jesse James.
Yeah, and I thought that was a clever trick by Ben by using a Pokemon name.
That's correct.
Did I get a point?
That's correct.
Yay, that was fun.
Way to go.
Thank you. Matt, let's hear that summary.
Let's see it pop up. Pop it up. That's not it at all.
My summary for this week, you guys are absolutely going to love. My summary is the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Excellent.
I'll golf clap.
What a summary. Gally, do you have a review for us for this movie?
Yeah, I think this is one of those films that has garnered a lot of traction since it got released. I know you guys don't really look at sort of box office and Rotten Tomatoes, and neither do we on our show. We don't really put too much stock in it, but the film lost a lot of money. I think I looked at the US box office, and I think it only made just shy of 4 million in the US, which is pretty bad on release. And I think it's just one of those films that's hugely underrated. The fact that Emily, you'd never even heard of it. I think you messaged me and said, I've never even heard of this film. And it stars Brad Pitt. I think this is one of those movies that perfect for a Sunday afternoon when it's raining and you've got 3 hours. But also absolutely just something that if you love watching character studies and if you like watching a film that is totally apt for 2021, but is set in a Western sort of time period, and it's got phenomenal performances throughout. I know that Ben, you made mention of the sort of the lack of female agency within the film. I would say that's period sort of accurate, and I think that's obviously that's done on purpose. I don't think it's this isn't a Michael Bay 90s film where it's like
right.
We just need to ignore those ladies over there and let the boys do all the work. I think this is one of those films that you really do have to engage with, though. It's not a passive watch, and I do think it will bake your noodle. You'll there's lots of stuff going on. You've celebrity, you've deconstruction of a myth, you've got phenomenal cinematography, the music by Nick Cave, and forgive me, I've forgotten the other chap,
Warren Ellis.
Yep. Touche. Plus, Nick Cave just rocks up and does a little live performance, which is wicked.
Yes.
Casey Affleck, whatever your thoughts are, considering some of the stuff that he's done in recent past, just phenomenal performances across the piece. And this, for me, was the film where Brad Pitt, he'd his production company had just started, and this is the first film that his production company had sort of part funded with Ridley Scott's. And this was the bridge, I think, for Brad Pitt. Just coming out of the Ocean's 11's films, trying to shed that kind of Hollywood star Brad Pitt and going into sort of Tree of Life, which again is another meditative film, which I don't actually enjoy that one, but this one I've got nothing but time for. So, yeah, watch Jesse James, or The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. And if you don't want to know what the film's about, don't look at the title. That's all I'll say.
Just do like Wes.
For me, this is a 5-star out of 5. I think this is a phenomenal work.
Yeah, this movie was really a bridge to Wesley's favorite movie, Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Yeah.
Well, less said about that one. I'm not a fan of that either.
Wes is going to kill you, Ben.
And now it's time to play Battle of the Cowards. I will pose 3 rounds of questions to our less than brave contenders and let them try to convince me who is the one that would shoot me while I'm dusting. The winner of each round will get disappointingly low value safe. Second place gets an ice bed. I will more easily be persuaded by the creative and entertaining answers. So cowards, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So I'm feeling very powerful today. So I need you both to convince a famous gang leader, Wessie Wames, to let you into his crew.
Ooh.
So I'll give you each a crime that my fellow criminals and I are planning. Then you have to convince me both why you should be included in your crime and why your opponent should not be included in theirs. So we're going to start with Ben. And Ben, the crime you want to get in on is we're going to steal a year's worth of herpes medication for my step half brother's partner from CVS. So Ben, why should you be included?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm a science guy. So once we get to CVS, I'm going to know exactly which medicine is the herpes medication. I'm going to know right what to go to make sure that that herpes is cured for your Steph Half Brothers partner. Also, you know, your family loves me and they'll just love me even more when I'm brought along on this journey to really help out your family. And I mean, let's just be honest. Herpes is a major issue in America. And you know, you need someone with a little bit of discretion because you don't want it getting out that your step half brother's partner has herpes. Like there's still a bit of a taboo with it. So I can keep a secret. Like I'm not gonna just shout out to the world that your step half brother's partner has herpes. I'm not gonna do that. So you want to bring me along. Also, there's a CVS right around the corner. Like let's just go. I'm ready. You're ready. You need me, and I need you. Because I also have herpes.
All right. I didn't know what to expect from that, so thank you. Matt, the crime that you want to get in on is we're going back in time to 2009, and we're going to set up a private account to start mining Bitcoin. Why do I need you in my gang?
Okay, so like I'm obviously really great with computers. I don't mean to just kind of throw out like, hey, do you guys even know what you're doing here? Like, you know, do you know how to set up a mining farm or like? I think you guys would just be lost. Maybe, I mean, if you have time travel down, I don't know. But I'm just an overall. I'm a great tech guy, so I'll be in the van and I'll say 30 more seconds, 30 more seconds, 30 more seconds. Okay, we mined another block, and you won't know what that means. But I know so much about Bitcoin specifically based on the year because of how much money we've lost out on. But furthermore, I'm very trustworthy with that kind of loot. I wouldn't want to steal any. I would just want my cut because I want the friendship. I want to be part of the gang. So that's why I would be in a perfect addition to the crew for a money heist.
I have so many comebacks for both of you, so I'm really hopeful that you two pick each other apart. All right, Ben. So tell me why Matt should not join in my Bitcoin heist.
Okay. First of all, Matt in 2009 was not even here with us. He was, I think, still in Japan at that time. So, you know, he's already abandoned you once. He's going to abandon you again. That's just the way it is. Also, Matt can't mine. Look at that weak frame. There's nothing about his body that says mining, even when it's computer mining. It just doesn't work for Matt. And lastly, Matt can't go back in time because he'll try to sleep with his mom.
What?
I got the reference.
In 2009, too. No. I got the reference.
Oh, I know.
This isn't having sex with your mom before you were born. This is Matt at 21, 22 having sex. The implications.
I just don't know if I get a rebuttal because I don't want to like destroy it. So
No, you don't get a rebuttal, but you can explain why Ben shouldn't be brought along.
Okay, so I hope you guys remember Ben's answer from a million years ago. But he claims he's a science guy, so he'll know where the medication is. So I just want to go ahead and pick that apart. He didn't go to school for more than 4 years, and it took him more than 4 years at one of the biggest party schools in Minnesota. I don't want to dox him too hard, but let's just say Mankato's doctorate program isn't very good. And secondly, Ben obviously can't keep a secret. So anybody gonna know who's got the herpes. And I think Ben being in your crew, he's gonna take that herpes from one person and he's gonna spread it around to everybody. He's gonna so your year's worth of herpes medication is gonna turn it into 7 days worth of herpes medication after Ben's through with your crew.
I'm glad we saved the really personal, gross stuff for right at the end.
Oh yeah, and he's gonna have sex with his own mom.
I'm so sorry, Gally. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. This is exactly my level, so I'm more than happy. I just wish I'd picked us on a more fun film that would dovetail onto this. That's all.
Oh, we had fun writing these questions, or at least Ben for sure had fun writing these questions.
I do have a question, just from a kind of UK perspective. Herpes. Do you guys also call them crabs, or is that just a UK thing?
That's a different
That's two
thing.
different things. Crabs is like a pubic lice type situation, and then herpes is more of a virus.
Wow. You wouldn't know that Ben would know that based on his education, but he does.
Well, you should, because I'm a science guy.
He's a science guy, right? He knew that because he knows science. I like it. Nope, happy with that.
Go,
Question
Wesley,
2.
go. Number 2.
Oh no, I don't feel very powerful anymore. After you betray and kill Wessie during the crime from question 1, you have to give the eulogy or the eulogy at my funeral. So we're gonna start off with Ben again. So let's hear that eulogy.
Friends, family of Wessie, we are here today to celebrate the life of the bright and capable young Wessie. Now, I was the one that killed him. Let's just be frank. I killed him, but it was because he was lying to us. He told us it was for his step half brother's partner, but Wessie actually has herpes. And I just couldn't take that kind of lying to me. It hurt me deeply to have my friend not tell me that he had herpes. We could have been herpes bros, celebrated our herpes together, relished in the herpes. But he didn't do that. Instead, he hid it from me and tried to pass it off on some far off related person to him. And that's just not fair to us. And I think you'll agree, Wesley's mom and dad, that he deserved to die for this.
Why are parents being brought in?
Well, I assume they're at your funeral, are they not?
That's a fair point.
Well, I can't exactly provide you comfort. I can provide you closure that Wesley died the way he lived, herpes riddled and uncured. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
So now it's Matt's turn.
Any questions?
Drunk Ben giving a eulogy.
The only follow-up, and you'll both get it. Are you sober while giving my eulogy?
Oh, God, no. I mean, I've lost my friend, even though he lied to me. You're still my friend, and I'm going to be just
You
plastered.
killed me.
Yeah, but you deserved it.
Matt, you killed me. Let's hear your eulogy.
Friends, family, Ben, we have gathered here today to celebrate the life of Wesley, who has tragically been killed in a terrible mining accident. We don't know many of the details on how he died, other than he was stuck with a computer down in an oil well, buried with all of the things that he loved, his stuffed animals and his money. He was a good man. We're not sure how old he was when he died, because as the year is 2009, that gets kind of confusing. As you all know, we came from the future. Because we're pretty cavalier about time travel.
Is my eulogy in 2009?
Yes.
Yeah. They're not going to bring your dead body back through time.
Yeah, but you could have the funeral in 2021.
Keep going, Matt.
Wesley, I know you're looking at your future here. It's thinking, when do I die?
Wesley's at his own funeral.
In what year do I travel back in time? And you might be looking at your body thinking, wow, do I look pretty good for either 45 or 35? But just know, you have many good years ahead of you, and your future is unavoidable. But I will tell you this, you had a great life, and nobody should be crying here because you're a wonderful man. We're a wonderful man.
Gally, how you feeling?
I'm kind of wrapped up in this is the craziest improv class I've ever been to.
That was a fun one. On to question 3. So to tease our milestone of next week having watched 50 movies from 2007 so far, let's test your memories a little bit and flex those theater muscles. So please pick the third act of a 2007 movie that we've already done on the show and turn that third act into a full-length play. And Matt, you finally get to start. So
let's go.
Let's go.
I chose the documentary Kong, Fistful of Quarters. Our main cast would be Steve Wybe, the challenger, the outsider. Billy Mitchell, world's best gamer, self-proclaimed, our antagonist. And Walter Day is the owner and founder of the Twin Galaxies in FunSpot Arcade. There's other characters, obviously, but I don't want to dive too deep. And my movie's third act is a refresher for Gallia. This will be, it works really well because you probably have never seen a play like this before with this 80s arcade vibe. It would still carry many classic themes like honor, jealousy, and betrayal. And the third act would go like, a challenger travels to a location, sets a new high score in Donkey Kong. Our antagonist doesn't compete or attend. He instead sends one of his goons, and he clearly cheats with a taped high score 9 months later. He challenges him in his hometown, and the antagonist refuses. But later, Walter Day acknowledges our protagonist's integrity and allows him to submit home scores, and he eventually wins. So the changes I would make, obviously, are that the characters are being asked a lot of questions in this documentary. So to get exactly how they were feeling, I would adapt the play by making Donkey Kong his own character, played by Josh Gad, in which he would sing as barrels rolled across the stage and he climbed ladders with set direction changes, with like screens incorporated from game footage from each individual player. And blue would signify our protagonist, red would signify our antagonist, and it'd be a sick fucking dope ass play.
I really appreciate the stage directions. Thank you, Matt. That was a nice visual.
Matt, you were like a ghostwriter for like Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson. That's a phenomenal third act there.
It happened in real life, so I think my big job was adapting it and taking, things they said directly to camera and trying to get that to translate on the stage.
You've got my money. I'll go and watch that film. I'll go and watch that.
Can I ask what made you choose this movie in particular?
Well, out of the list of movies, I wanted a compelling third act, and just that whole challenging a cheater at something you're good at just really rang through for me, and especially because Fistful of Quarters has a lot of extra parts in it that I felt like could have been filtered away, and you could just focus on only this competition. I felt like there was enough meat on the bones for it to be a good play.
That was a brave choice.
So brave.
Why did Ben laugh like that?
Just wait.
Okay. Well, I think that's a perfect segue into Ben's answer.
We open on a devastated world let down by indifference. The delicate eco-balance has been thrown into flux as the result of a labor dispute. This is the setting and opening tone of B-movie, the play, the rise and fall of Barry B. Benson. We're introduced to a ravaged New York City park where all the plant life has died. New Yorkers are huddled around a tree, protesting the bees' refusal to do their job. And I'm thinking of a stage that's like two-tiered, kind of like Hamilton, where the upper level is the human scale and the lower level is bee scale. So we then focus in on the interior of the hive as we're introduced to the bees living their best life, ambivalent to the suffering of the outside world. From there, much of the first act will play out just like the end of B-movie, with Vanessa and Barry flying to the Rose Parade to get pollen from the last flowers. The thrilling plane save will be the climax of the first act, as all of the bees rally to land a plane safely. In addition to that, the first act of the play will also focus on the events of the third act of the movie from the perspective of the humans, something we didn't get in B movie. So it's going to expand this world even more. Like, what does Ken think about all this strike stuff? The play's going to answer that. Played also by Patrick Warburton. But the second act is going to go beyond the scope of the movie, kinda. The second act will be all about Barry and Vanessa going to a play entirely made up of the events of the second act of B movie. A courtroom drama that Barry and Vanessa have balcony seats to. The play will be a skewering of the events we saw in the movie, as it will be focused on how the trial was seen through the eyes of the Bs. Think of a more comedic A Few Good Men. B movie, the play, ends with Barry B. Benson being assassinated by a nature conservation-minded young B actor who believed that Barry B. Benson would put the world at risk again with his wild ideas and flippant disregard for the B way of life. Also, I forgot to mention, all of the Bs in my play will be played by little people in bee costumes.
Oh my God.
Ben, can I cast Ashley Judd in this new interpretation of B movie? I don't know why. I feel like she'd be great. No, can we have Ashley Judd in it?
I think she's our Vanessa. You know, that's a great casting choice.
Thank you.
She's our romantic interest for Barry. I think that's a great choice, Gally. Thank you.
So
not a problem.
In the play of the courtroom drama,
the play
Barry
within
B.
the play.
Benson dies in the play, but Barry B.
Benson dies in real life while he's watching the play of the second act, kind of like Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
Barry B. Benson is essentially the Lincoln of bees.
Shoots a natty. Let's start with question 3, just because. So question 3, we had to rewrite the third act of a movie that we've done on this podcast so far and turn it into a play. Matt chose King of Kong, which I thought was kind of funny since Emily did bring up Fistful of Dollars early in the episode, and I was going to make a joke, but then everybody talked, so I didn't get to add that in, so I was happy that came back up. Matt, the Josh Gad being a real personified Donkey Kong, I thought was really brilliant, and I liked the red, blue, just the visualization of that. Ben, you chose B movie, and the way that you incorporated the movie into itself, I thought was really brilliant, especially with such a terrible trial in the actual movie. Yeah, I don't have a ton to say. They were both good. Just re-listen to the answers and you'll enjoy it for yourself. But that one's going to Ben. So I want to go question 2 because that's how my number brain works. But we'll jump to 1 because it informs question 2.
Goes in order.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So question 1 and 2 are about Wessie Wames, the infamous gang leader, and you had to convince me that I should let you join a crime. Ben, your crime was stealing a year's worth of herpes medication for a 6-step half-sister's partner from CVS. Whoa, I can't believe that.
He even said it wrong.
Didn't. Yeah. Ben, science guy, totally makes sense. I really loved the keep a secret as a threat. You did kind of like, you didn't, it wasn't a total try to be sneaky about it, but I picked up on it right away. And then I loved how you leaned into it.
It was great.
Yeah. And then my family loves you, Ben, but I think they've still got a little bit of hatred for your brother. I don't know if he'll ever live that down.
I'm not my brother, though. I'm not my brother's keeper. You can't hold me to that.
Matt's crime was, we're going back in time to 2009 to mine. I just realized there's a lot of rhymes for some Bitcoin. I really liked, Matt, when you said, do you even know what you're doing? And then I don't think you meant to, but you did just the nerdiest little chuckle afterwards. And then repeating every 30 seconds, we're almost there. 30 seconds more, 30 seconds more. Okay, we mined another block. But then I also think it's funny that anybody that starts a sentence with, well, I'm not going to steal from you. Like, that's so clear that you're going to steal from me.
Yeah, I saw question 2 coming. I was like, ooh.
The rebuttals, I think, is kind of what won me over more. Matt saying that the doctorate program from Mankato doesn't give you the quality to rob a CVS was very funny, even though we know that doctors can be anything nowadays. Ben can't keep a secret. I think that was kind of the point, but I thought that was funny. Then Ben's rebuttal for you was that you were in Japan. I don't know. That didn't really stick with me because if it was a crime from now, going back in to 2009 doesn't mean that he will have abandoned me. And honestly,
Well, he
Bitcoin, yeah, but Bitcoin wasn't on the line. You did get me with the Back to the Future bit.
Also, don't forget Ben spread herpes around to your crew.
That is really what won us over, though. Seriously.
The nail in the coffin was Matt's stinger of, and Ben's also going to have sex with his mom. So,
Yeah.
so Matt won question 1.
The joys of going second.
All right. Question 2 then was to read the eulogy after you killed me at question 1's crime scene. Ben, celebrating my life, being very earnest. You were truthful. You said you had to kill me because of a betrayal that you had herpes and we could have been herpes bros. You didn't have to make me think that my parents want me dead. That's not something anyone needs to ever hear. Matt's eulogy started out, I don't think you meant it. I think you were just clearing your throat, but it started out with like, ugh, that reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite. So I thought that's how you were going to read the eulogy. But I wasn't let down. That wasn't the fact. Friends, family, and Ben, perfect. Stuck the landing. The fact that you covered it up by me dying in an actual mine because nobody knew what Bitcoin was in 2009. But I mean, we already said it. You literally blew my hat off when you made me realize that I would be at my own funeral. And then the twist at the end of you were a wonderful man. Well, you are a wonderful man. So, Matt, you just absolutely crushed that one. So, question 2 went to Matt. So, Matt wins this week 2-1.
Way to go, Matt.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
They were all so funny this week. We should do improv every week.
These were really fun.
I think going second, I committed to attacking Ben because I feel like that's what the listeners would know most and attach to. So, Gally, thank you for being on and talking about Jesse James. It was so wonderful having you on. Do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Oh God, I'm really bad at this. I actually forget to do it on our actual show, but you can follow us on Twitter. I don't know if you guys are going to chuck us on the show notes. I think, you see, this is how bad I am. I think we are at Rewind Movie Cast, which gets rid of the, but we had to have the. By the way, just a quick one on the name. No imagination amongst myself and my gang of outlaws. We just thought, well, why don't we just say it as it is, like the title of this movie?
We just replaced milkshake with podcast.
Yeah, well, exactly. Sometimes you just got to keep it simple. But yeah, so yeah, you can find us on Twitter. We've got a little Facebook page as well. But yeah, that was it. That was really it. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I hope to the highest of highs that I haven't completely kiboshed your podcast here, and I've really, really enjoyed it. This is the first time for me, so if any of the listeners are wondering why I'm and ahhing and generally just sound like I'm under duress, it's because I'm very, very nervous about not doing my own show. So, but thank you guys for sort of getting me through, because I think it's testament to you guys that you've managed to get me through without me shoot myself in the back, so to speak. So yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone thinking that you were anything other than exceptional, because you were a very great guest. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you to the people still listening. If you are, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast. Follow us on social media, IDYP_podcast. That's Twitter and Instagram, and also YouTube. We just appreciate you so much doing all the things that help podcasts grow. Ben, what's our next movie next week?
Yeah, next week we'll be watching Shrek the Third, and we'll be having on a couple of cinephiles from When Cinephiles Attack, Rashawn and Josh. So we're excited to have Rashawn back and Josh on for the first time. They've become pretty good friends of ours since starting this podcast stuff. So happy to have them on again.
And speaking of like a lighter film,
I don't know.
Very different.
180 tonally. Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.